The quantum laboratory hummed with an electric tension that had nothing to do with the sophisticated equipment surrounding Dr. Elena Rodriguez. Outside the reinforced windows, the first light of dawn crept across the New Mexico desert, casting long shadows over the hidden research facility. Her fingers traced the edge of a holographic display, lines of impossible equations dancing beneath her touch. 12 years of research. 12 years of being called a madwoman. A dreamer, a scientist whose theories defied everything humanity understood about quantum mechanics. The scars of academic ridicule were etched into her memory as deeply as the complex algorithms that now filled her screens. The transmission from the Zorn Collective arrived without warning, its digital signature cutting through every communication network on the planet like a knife. Most would see it as a threat. Elena saw it as an opportunity. Her assistant, Marcus Way, burst through the laboratory doors. His normally composed demeanor shattered. "They're here," he said, his voice a mix of terror and anticipation. "The Zorn fleet has been detected just beyond lunar orbit." Elena didn't look up from her work. Her fingers continued their ballet across the holographic interface, recalibrating systems that most scientists would have considered pure fantasy just a decade ago. "I know," she responded coolly. The massive screen behind her flickered to life, displaying the Zorn fleet, a constellation of metallic structures that looked more like living organisms than traditional spacecraft. Each vessel pulsed with an alien energy, their surfaces shifting and reconfiguring in ways that defied human understanding of material science. The Zorn's initial transmission was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. Cold, calculating, absolute. Inhabitants of Earth, your civilization, HASBENCLECTED FOR SOASTMATIs, NTEJORATION. You will surrender all technological and biological resources. Resistance is MATE UAV-72 Standard Orbital CYCLEs 2CO MPLI. Marcus watched Elena, waiting for a reaction. She remained perfectly still, her eyes reflecting the alien fleet's image like two pools of liquid mercury. "They think we're predictable," Elena muttered, more to herself than to Marcus. "They believe they can quantify our entire species' potential with their computational models." A slight smile, almost predatory, began to form at the corner of her mouth. The laboratory was no ordinary research facility. Beneath layers of quantum shielding and computational complexity lay something far more revolutionary than anyone outside this room could imagine. Elena's work wasn't just theoretical physics. It was a complete reimagining of how matter, energy, and information could interact. Her primary project, codenamed Quantum Horizon, represented humanity's most advanced and most secretive technological development. What appeared to be random energy fluctuations on her screens were actually complex communication patterns, a language that existed between quantum states. Marcus understood enough to be both terrified and excited. "The International Committee wants a response," he said. "They're expecting a diplomatic transmission, maybe a show of defiance or—" "They'll get something," Elena interrupted, "but not what they expect." She activated a series of quantum entanglement protocols, her fingers moving with surgical precision. Each keystroke was a complex mathematical argument, challenging the very fundamental assumptions of physics as the Zorn understood them. What the alien collective didn't realize was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades, not through traditional military might, but through scientific innovation that existed at the bleeding edge of theoretical possibility. The quantum display began to shift, its patterns becoming increasingly complex. Lines of probability began to weave themselves into structures that defied traditional computational logic. Elena was doing more than preparing a defense. She was crafting a response that would fundamentally challenge the Zorn's understanding of technological capability. "They selected the wrong planet to invade," she whispered. Outside, the first rays of sunlight caught the edge of her quantum interface, transforming the laboratory into a cathedral of impossible potential. Humanity's first true response to the alien threat was being born, not with a weapon, but with an idea so radical it would reshape the understanding of existence itself. The underground nexus thrummed with controlled chaos. Nestled 7 levels beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex, it was more than a command center. It was humanity's neural network of last resort. General Marcus Chen surveyed the room, a mosaic of the most brilliant minds humanity could assemble. To his left, Kai Nakamura hunched over a holographic interface, fingers dancing across quantum-encrypted networks. At just 27, he was the youngest person in the room, and quite possibly the most dangerous. His background was a classified patchwork, a prodigy who'd simultaneously earned doctorates in computational linguistics, quantum computing, and synapsological communication from 3 different continents. "We're more than a military response," Chen muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "We're a species-level intervention." Dr. Amara O'Keefe approached, her digital tablet displaying complex psychological profile matrices of the Zorn Collective. "Their communication structure is hierarchical," she explained, "but with unexpected fracture points. They've never encountered a species that doesn't follow predictable evolutionary patterns." Kai looked up, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "Predictability is our greatest weapon right now. They'll expect us to be predictable. We'll be anything but." The room was a technological marvel that defied conventional understanding. Quantum computers interlinked with biological neural networks, creating a computational system that was part machine, part human consciousness. Each specialist represented a different approach to the alien threat. A former Israeli cyber warfare expert worked alongside a Brazilian biomechanical engineer. A Russian linguist collaborated with a Canadian quantum physicist. They weren't just a team. They were a living, breathing representation of humanity's collaborative potential. "The first layer of our response," Kai announced, "is already in motion." Holographic displays flickered to life, showing intricate network infiltrations that were simultaneously happening across multiple communication spectrums. What appeared to be random data bursts were actually carefully crafted information packets designed to exploit the Zorn's technological infrastructure. General Chen recognized the brilliance of the approach. This wasn't about brute force. It was about systemic manipulation. Each data packet was a precision instrument, carrying layers of psychological and technological challenges that would gradually destabilize the alien fleet's unified command structure. Dr. O'Keefe's psychological profiles began to overlay the communication streams. "Look here," she pointed to a section of the holographic display. "Their communication hierarchy has inherent trust protocols, but those protocols assume a linear, predictable information flow. We're introducing quantum uncertainty into their most fundamental communication systems." Kay's smile was both terrifying and beautiful. "We're not just breaking their network," he explained. "We're making them question the very nature of their technological assumptions." The room operated with a synchronicity that defied traditional military structures. No single person was in complete control. Instead, it was a fluid, adaptive system where leadership emerged organically based on immediate needs. A series of quantum entanglement relays began to activate, creating communication channels that existed in multiple states simultaneously. These weren't just communication methods, they were fundamental challenges to the Zorn's understanding of information transfer. 72 hours, General Chen reminded the team. "That's how long we have before their primary invasion window." Dr. Elena Rodriguez entered the room, her quantum interface still active and trailing holographic equations like a digital cape. "We're not just preparing a defense," she announced. "We're preparing a complete reimagining of first contact." The team understood the unspoken message. This wasn't about survival. This was about defining humanity's place in the galactic ecosystem. Kai's systems began to pulse with an almost living energy. Data streams transformed, mutated, became something more than simple information. They were crafting a response that was part communication, part psychological warfare, part scientific demonstration. "They think they know us," Kai whispered, his fingers moving with impossible speed. They have no idea what we're capable of. Outside the complex, the first wave of humanity's response began to ripple across global and extraterrestrial networks. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a threat. It was something far more dangerous. It was a complete reimagining of what first contact could mean. Dr. Amara Okik stood before a wall of holographic displays, her dark eyes reflecting a complex tapestry of alien communication patterns. The room around her was a symphony of controlled chaos, a psychological warfare center that looked more like an artist's studio than a military installation. "Language is more than words," she muttered, tracing the intricate neural pathways of Zorn communication protocols. "It's a living organism, and we're about to perform surgery." Her team, a carefully selected group of linguists, psychologists, and communication specialists, worked with a precision that bordered on the mystical. Each member represented a different approach to decoding and manipulating the Zorn's communication infrastructure. Zara Mikhailova, a Russian linguist with a background in computational semiotics, had been studying the Zorn's communication patterns for years. Her analysis revealed something extraordinary. The alien collective's language was less a method of communication and more a rigid computational system. Every transmission was a complex algorithm, designed to maintain absolute hierarchical control. "They don't communicate," Zora explained to her colleagues. "They compute. Every message is a line of code, every response a predetermined subroutine." On the primary display, fragments of Zorn transmissions danced, complex geometric patterns that shifted and transformed. To an untrained eye, they appeared random. To Amara and her team, they were a living manuscript waiting to be rewritten. Kai Nakamura entered the room, bringing with him a quantum communication device that looked more like a piece of abstract art than a technological instrument. "We're not just going to translate," he said, his voice calm and precise. "We're going to introduce linguistic viruses." The first transmission was deceptively simple. It appeared to be a standard mathematical sequence, something the Zorn would immediately recognize and process. But embedded within those numbers were psychological triggers, subtle narrative constructs designed to introduce doubt, to create microscopic fractures in the Zorn's collective consciousness. Amara watched as the first transmission was launched. The holographic displays flickered, showing the message propagating through the alien communication network like a living organism. Within moments, something extraordinary began to happen. Subtle changes appeared in the Zorn's communication patterns. Hesitations, micropauses that shouldn't exist in their supposedly perfect computational language. Each pause represented a moment of uncertainty, a crack in their seemingly impenetrable psychological armor. "Look," Zora pointed to a section of the display. "Their tertiary communication nodes are showing unexpected deviation patterns." What they were doing was more than psychological warfare. It was a complete deconstruction of the Zorn's understanding of communication itself. Each transmission was a precision instrument, designed to challenge the fundamental assumptions of the alien collective. A communication officer on one of the Zorn vessels, designated as Operative Chirac, began to experience something unprecedented. The linguistic triggers introduced by the human team were creating cognitive dissonance, generating thought patterns that defied the Zorn's strict hierarchical programming. Chirac's personal log, captured and translated in real time, revealed the first signs of individual thought. Anomen aloi detcted. Communication purotosios, demonstrating unexpected variability. Cannot computef. It was a tiny crack. But in the Zorn's rigidly structured society, a tiny crack was equivalent to a complete systemic breakdown. Kai's quantum communication device began to pulse with an almost living energy. "We're not just sending messages," he explained to Amara. "We're teaching them a new way of thinking about communication itself." The transmissions continued, each one a carefully crafted piece of linguistic art. They introduced historical narratives that challenged the Zorn's understanding of conflict. They embedded mathematical sequences that contained philosophical challenges. They created communication patterns that existed in multiple states simultaneously. Zara noticed something even more profound. The Zorn's communication was beginning to fragment. What was once a unified computational language was developing unexpected variations. Individual nodes were starting to generate unique response patterns. "We're witnessing the birth of individuality," she whispered. Amara watched the displays, a slight smile forming on her lips. Humanity wasn't just defending itself. It was fundamentally challenging an entire alien civilization's understanding of communication, consciousness, and individual thought. The first true battle wasn't happening with weapons. It was happening in the most complex battlefield imaginable, the realm of language and consciousness itself. The demonstration was scheduled for precisely 3:47 hours GMT, a time selected not for its tactical significance, but for its mathematical asymmetry. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a device that defied every known principle of physics, her quantum interface humming with potential energy. General Marcus Chen watched from a reinforced observation chamber, his weathered hands gripping a holographic control panel. Around him, the most brilliant minds humanity could assemble held their collective breath. The Quantum Horizon device looked nothing like a weapon. It was a crystalline structure that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its surface shifting between solid matter and pure energy. Fractal patterns danced across its surface, mathematical equations made manifest in three-dimensional space. "Calibration complete," Elena announced, her voice calm despite the magnitude of what was about to happen. Quantum entanglement protocols at 98.7% synchronization. Kai Nakamura's fingers flew across a secondary interface, running final verification sequences. Every system was interconnected: biological neural networks, quantum computational matrices, and something entirely new that existed between known scientific paradigms. The Zorn fleet, still believing in their technological superiority, continued to maintain their invasion formation. Their sensors were sophisticated beyond human understanding, capable of detecting the slightest technological anomaly. But they were about to encounter something fundamentally beyond their comprehension. "Target acquisition confirmed," Kai reported. "We have full quantum lock on the primary Zorn command vessel." Elena's smile was predatory. "Not a weapon," she muttered. "A demonstration." The Quantum Horizon device began to pulse. But pulse was too simple a word. It existed in multiple states simultaneously, vibrating, shifting, communicating through quantum frequencies that defied traditional understanding of energy transmission. On the main display, the Zorn command vessel suddenly experienced something impossible. Its entire technological infrastructure began to reconfigure, not through physical destruction, but through a complete reimagining of its operational parameters. Quantum-encoded instructions began to rewrite the ship's fundamental operating systems, introducing mathematical paradoxes that challenged the very foundation of the vessel's computational logic. "They're not losing power," Dr. Amara O'Keefe observed, her psychological warfare team watching in fascination. "They're losing understanding." The Zorn vessel's external configuration began to shift, not through any physical mechanism, but through a fundamental alteration of its quantum state. Defensive systems attempted to respond, but each defensive protocol was simultaneously neutralized and transformed. It was a surgical strike of pure information. General Chen understood the profound implications. This wasn't about destroying the alien technology. It was about demonstrating that human understanding could completely override their most sophisticated systems. "Communication channels are open," Kai reported. "We're transmitting the mathematical proof simultaneously with the quantum reconfiguration." The proof was elegant in its complexity, a series of quantum algorithms that were simultaneously a weapon, a communication method, and a philosophical argument. It challenged the Zorn's fundamental understanding of technological determinism. One of the Zorn communication officers, the same Jirac who had begun experiencing individual thought in the previous psychological warfare phase, watched in stunned incomprehension. The vessel's systems were being rewritten not through force, but through a complete reimagining of computational possibility. System integrity compromised, the ship's primary AI reported. Cannot compute defensive response. But it wasn't destruction. It was transformation. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward, activating the final phase of the demonstration. The Quantum Horizon device began to broadcast, not a message, but a living mathematical construct that existed between communication and pure potential. "This is what humanity looks like," she whispered. "Not a threat, not a target, a possibility." The Zorn fleet watched as one of their most advanced command vessels was systematically and elegantly reprogrammed, not destroyed, not conquered, transformed. In that moment, the entire concept of technological warfare was being redefined. Humanity wasn't fighting. It was teaching. It was showing an alien civilization that technology was more than a tool of conquest. It was a language of potential. General Chen looked at Elena, understanding the profound nature of what had just occurred. "They won't understand this," he said. "Not yet," Elena responded. "But they will." The cultural deconstruction began with a whisper. Dr. Amara O'Keefe's team had spent years preparing this moment, a comprehensive psychological intervention that would transform the very fabric of the Zorn Collective's societal understanding. What appeared to be random communication bursts were actually precisely crafted narrative constructs designed to exploit the deepest vulnerabilities of an alien civilization. Zara Mikhailova stood before a holographic display, showing the intricate social structure of the Zorn. It wasn't a hierarchy. It was a complex neural network of information and control, each node representing a critical point of cultural transmission. And humanity was about to introduce a virus of individual thought. "We're not just breaking their communication," Zara explained to her colleagues. "We're teaching them the concept of individual consciousness." The first layer of intervention targeted the Zorn's fundamental belief system. Embedded within quantum encrypted transmissions were historical narratives, not of human achievement, but of human struggle. Stories of individuals who had challenged impossible odds. Accounts of societies that had transformed through individual acts of courage and imagination. Each transmission was a precision instrument. Mathematical proofs intertwined with emotional narratives. Quantum-encoded messages that existed simultaneously as data and as living stories. On the Zorn command vessel, Operative Jirac experienced something unprecedented. The psychological triggers introduced earlier were now developing into something more profound. Individual thought was no longer a glitch. It was becoming a possibility. Kai Nakamura watched the progression with a scientist's precision and an artist's appreciation. "Look," he pointed to the display. "Their collective consciousness is developing fracture points." What was happening wasn't destruction. It was evolution. The Zorn had conquered hundreds of civilizations. Their method was always the same: total assimilation, complete elimination of individual potential. They saw diversity as a weakness, uniformity as the ultimate strength. Humanity was about to show them how fundamentally wrong they were. Dr. Elena Rodriguez joined the team, bringing with her the quantum communication interface. "We're not just challenging their technology," she said. "We're challenging their entire conceptual understanding of consciousness." The transmissions began to introduce complex philosophical concepts, paradoxes that challenged the Zorn's linear thinking, mathematical sequences that contained emotional resonances, quantum-encoded narratives that existed in multiple interpretative states simultaneously. A critical moment occurred when the psychological intervention reached a specific frequency. On multiple Zorn vessels, individual communication nodes began to generate unique response patterns. What was once a unified computational collective was developing unexpected variations. Zara noticed the first significant breakthrough. "They're developing individual contextual interpretation," she said, her voice a mix of scientific excitement and profound wonder. The Zorn leadership began to experience something they had never encountered: doubt, uncertainty. the possibility that their understanding might be fundamentally limited. Kai's quantum interface began to pulse with an almost living energy. "We're not just sending information," he explained. "We're creating a new form of communication that exists between data and consciousness." The cultural deconstruction was elegant in its complexity. Each transmission was simultaneously a mathematical proof, a philosophical argument, an emotional narrative, a quantum communication event. On the primary Zorn command vessel, Operative Jirac's personal log began to show unprecedented variations. Individual perspective, DETCTED. Collective interpretation, CHALNGD. Ken, note, reconcile PREVIOSCOMPUTAIONAL modals with EMIMERG and coincile uses and ESs. It was more than a crack in their system. It was the birth of individual potential. General Marcus Chen watched the progression, understanding the profound nature of what was happening. This wasn't just a defensive strategy. It was a complete reimagining of cultural interaction. "We're not destroying them," he said to Alina. "We're offering them a different way of existing." Alina's smile was both predatory and compassionate. "Exactly." The Zorn fleet watched in growing incomprehension as their most fundamental cultural assumptions were systematically challenged. Humanity wasn't just defending itself. It was offering a fundamental transformation of consciousness itself. In that moment, the entire concept of first contact was being redefined, not as a conflict, but as an invitation to a more complex understanding of existence. The offensive began with silence. A carefully selected team of 8 specialists gathered in a compartmentalized strike chamber deep within the underground nexus. They weren't soldiers in any traditional sense. They were something far more dangerous. Kai Nakamura led the team, his quantum interface merging seamlessly with a series of advanced tactical systems that defied conventional military understanding. Dr. Alina Rodriguez had designed their equipment. Each piece was more than a tool. It was a living system that adapted in real time, blurring the lines between technology, biological response, and pure potential. Maya Ortiz, a former special operations tactician turned quantum systems engineer, checked her neural interface. Her background included classified operations in 17 different conflict zones, but nothing compared to what they were about to attempt. "We're not just attacking," Kai explained to the team. "We're conducting a multi-dimensional intervention." The Zorn fleet had been systematically destabilized by previous psychological and technological attacks. But this was different. This was a precision strike that would simultaneously target multiple levels of their technological and organizational infrastructure. Each team member wore a bioadaptive system that was part tactical gear, part living technology. Nano-computational interfaces allowed for instantaneous communication and adaptive response. Their equipment wasn't just protective, it was an extension of human potential. The first wave of the offensive was invisible. Quantum-encoded infiltration protocols began to weave through the Zorn fleet's communication and navigation systems. Unlike traditional cyber attacks, these were living systems of information, mathematical constructs that existed simultaneously as communication, weapon, and evolutionary trigger. Maya's tactical display showed the progression. "We're not breaking their systems," she reported. "We're rewriting their fundamental operational parameters." Zorn defensive systems began to experience impossible contradictions. Navigation protocols started to generate recursive loops. Communication channels developed unexpected interference patterns that defied their computational models. On the primary Zorn command vessel, Operative Jirac watched in growing incomprehension as multiple system redundancies began to fail. What was happening wasn't a traditional attack. It was a complete reimagining of technological possibility. Kai's interface pulsed with a living energy. "Target acquisition is more than location," he explained to his team. "It's about understanding the entire systemic potential of a technological infrastructure." The strike team moved with a synchronicity that defied traditional military coordination. Each member was simultaneously an operator, a living sensor, and a computational node in a complex adaptive system. Dr. Rodriguez's quantum communication devices began to generate interference patterns that existed between technological attack and pure information transfer. They weren't just disrupting Zorn systems, they were teaching them a new way of understanding technological interaction. "We're offering them a choice," Maya muttered, her tactical display showing the progressive destabilization of the alien fleet. Not destruction. Transformation. The Zorn vessels began to experience systemic failures that were more profound than simple technological breakdown. Their defensive systems started to generate unexpected response patterns. Computational nodes that were once perfectly synchronized began to develop individual adaptive responses. Each infiltration protocol was simultaneously a tactical intervention, a communication method, a philosophical argument about technological potential, a living system of information transfer. Operative Jirac's personal log began to show increasingly complex variations. CYSTE-NIC integrity, compromised. Individual adaptive, RESPONCs, emerging. Can note reconcile with previous operational parameters. General Marcus Chen watched the progression from the underground nexus. This wasn't just a military strike. It was a comprehensive demonstration of human potential. "We're rewriting the rules of technological engagement," he said to the team monitoring the offensive. The Zorn fleet watched in growing incomprehension as their most sophisticated defensive systems were systematically transformed. Humanity wasn't just attacking, it was offering a fundamental reimagining of technological interaction. Kai looked at his team, a dangerous smile forming. "We're not just defending ourselves," he said. "We're showing them what's possible." The offensive continued, each moment a precise intervention that existed between attack and invitation. Not a destruction of the Zorn fleet, but a comprehensive demonstration of a more complex understanding of technological potential. In that moment, the entire concept of technological conflict was being redefined, not as a zero-sum game, but as an opportunity for mutual transformation. The breaking point arrived not with a thunderous explosion, but with a profound silence. Deep within the primary Zorn command vessel, Operative Jirac experienced something unprecedented in the collective's entire historical record. Individual thought had transformed from a microscopic aberration to a fundamental existential crisis. The vessel's central computational matrix, once a perfect, unified system of collective consciousness, now resembled a fractured neural network. Computational nodes that had existed in perfect synchronization now generated unique, divergent responses. What was once absolute certainty had become a landscape of profound uncertainty. Dr. Amara O'Keefe watched the progression through a quantum-encrypted monitoring system, her team holding their collective breath. "We're witnessing the deconstruction of a collective consciousness," she whispered, her voice a mix of scientific fascination and profound respect. The psychological warfare had evolved into something far more complex than a simple attack. It was a comprehensive challenge to the Zorn's most fundamental understanding of existence. Kai Nakamura's quantum interface began to generate a series of transmissions that existed simultaneously as mathematical proof, philosophical argument, and living communication. Each signal was a precise intervention designed to challenge the very concept of collective thought. "We're not destroying them," Kai explained to General Chen. "We're offering them a different way of understanding consciousness." On multiple Zorn vessels, individual communication nodes began to experience something impossible. They were developing context, perspective, the ability to generate thoughts that deviated from the collective's predetermined parameters. Operative Jirac's personal log became a testament to this transformation. Individual perspective emerging. Kolik hitai. Paradigm. Fundamental. Lihi. Challenged. Can note. Reconcile previous operational parameters with emerging coincidences. The Zorn leadership watched in growing incomprehension as their most sophisticated systems began to generate unexpected variations. Their entire civilization had been built on the absolute elimination of individual potential. Now that very potential was emerging as their most significant vulnerability. Dr. Elena Rodriguez understood the profound nature of what was happening. "This isn't just a technological intervention," she said. "This is a comprehensive reimagining of consciousness itself." The quantum communication devices began to generate interference patterns that existed between communication and pure potential. They weren't just disrupting the Zorn systems, they were teaching them a fundamentally different way of understanding existence. Each transmission was simultaneously a mathematical proof of individual potential, a philosophical argument against collective determinism, an emotional narrative of individual transformation, a quantum communication event that existed in multiple interpretative states. The Zorn fleet began to experience systemic failures that went far beyond technological breakdown. Their most fundamental assumptions about consciousness, communication, and potential were being comprehensively challenged. General Marcus Chen watched the progression with a mixture of scientific fascination and profound respect. "We're not just defending ourselves," he said. "We're offering them an entirely new way of understanding existence." Zara Mikhailova's linguistic analysis showed something extraordinary. The Zorn's communication patterns were developing unexpected variations. What was once a perfectly synchronized collective language was becoming something more complex, more nuanced. "They're developing individual contextual interpretation," she reported. "Their entire communication system is transforming." The breaking point wasn't a moment of destruction. It was a moment of profound possibility. Operative Jirac's final transmission captured the essence of this transformation. Quolicitative paradigm, insufficient. Individual potential emerging. Previous understanding of the human DMNTALI inadequate. On the Zorn command vessel, the central computational matrix began to generate responses that were unique, divergent, and fundamentally unpredictable. The perfect synchronization that had defined their civilization was becoming something far more complex. Kai looked at his team, understanding the profound nature of what they had accomplished. "We're not just changing their technology," he said. "We're offering them a different way of existing." The Zorn fleet watched in growing incomprehension as their most fundamental assumptions were systematically challenged. Humanity wasn't just defending itself. It was offering a comprehensive reimagining of consciousness, potential, and existence. In that moment, the entire concept of first contact was being redefined, not as a conflict, but as an invitation to a more complex understanding of what it means to be alive, to be conscious, to be potential itself. The final transmission would be remembered throughout galactic history. General Marcus Chen stood alongside Dr. Elena Rodriguez and Kai Nakamura in the primary communication chamber of the underground nexus. Around them, a carefully selected team represented the most diverse and brilliant minds humanity could assemble. Scientists, linguists, philosophers, tactical experts, each a testament to human potential. The quantum communication array hummed with an energy that existed between technology and pure possibility. Every system had been calibrated, every transmission carefully constructed to be more than just a message. It was an invitation, a challenge, a comprehensive reimagining of first contact. "This isn't just about us," Elena said, her fingers dancing across the quantum interface. "This is about what's possible." Kai's quantum communication device began to generate a transmission that was simultaneously a mathematical proof, a philosophical argument, and a living communication event. Each layer of the message existed in multiple interpretative states, a comprehensive challenge to traditional communication paradigms. The remaining Zorn fleet hung in space, their once unified systems now a complex tapestry of emerging individual potentials. Operative Jirac, who had become a symbol of the transformation, prepared to receive the transmission on behalf of what remained of the Zorn Collective. The message began. To the Zorn Collective. The transmission started. "You approached Earth with an assumption of absolute superiority. What you discovered was something far more profound. The communication was a masterpiece of multidimensional complexity. Mathematical sequences intertwined with philosophical arguments, quantum-encoded narratives that existed simultaneously as data, emotion, and pure potential. Each layer of the transmission demonstrated a fundamental aspect of human potential: adaptability. Detailed records of human civilization's most profound transformations, showing how humanity had continuously evolved, challenged, and reimagined itself. Individual potential. Comprehensive studies of human innovation, highlighting how individual creativity had consistently overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges. Collaborative complexity. Demonstrations of human ability to work across diverse perspectives, cultures, and disciplines. Philosophical depth. A comprehensive exploration of consciousness, potential, and the nature of existence itself. The transmission wasn't a threat. It wasn't a declaration of victory. It was an invitation to a more complex understanding of existence. We did not defeat you. The message continued. We offered you a different way of understanding potential. Dr. Amara O'Keefe had carefully crafted the linguistic components, ensuring that each word, each mathematical sequence, each quantum-encoded signal carried multiple layers of meaning. It was communication as a living system, dynamic, adaptive, transformative. Zara Mikhailova monitored the transmission's reception, tracking the complex psychological and linguistic responses generated across the remaining Zorn vessels. What they were witnessing was more than communication. It was a comprehensive reimagining of first contact. Operative Jrak's response began to emerge, fragmented, complex, fundamentally different from previous Zorn communications. Previous understanding, insufficient. Individual potential emerging. Collective paradigm. Alright. E.T. General Chen understood the profound nature of what they had accomplished. We're not just changing their technology, he said. We're offering them a different way of existing. The final layers of the transmission were a comprehensive demonstration of human potential. Quantum communication protocols that existed in multiple states. Philosophical arguments that challenged fundamental assumptions. Emotional narratives that demonstrated the power of individual perspective. Mathematical proofs that showed the complexity of human understanding. To the galaxy watching, the transmission concluded, this is humanity. Not a threat. Not a target. A possibility. The quantum communication array pulsed with a living energy, a final, comprehensive statement that existed between communication, potential, and pure possibility. Kai looked at his team, understanding the profound nature of what they had accomplished. We're not just changing their civilization, he said.